Chris Lee and Blake Lovell of Southeastern14.com here to talk about basketball games in the SEC from Wednesday night, February the 2nd. Let's start in Lexington, where Kentucky beats Vanderbilt 77-70. Cats had 4 players in double figures. Davion Mintz had 21. Keon Brooks, his second straight big scoring game, he had 20. Blake, we noted Vandy had played Kentucky close. It really mucked the game up, I thought. That game got chippy. You had technical fouls, I think, on both coaches. You had some flagrant ones. Not the prettiest game to watch, but probably more interesting than most people thought it would be.
Yeah, you did mention that historically they've played them pretty close over the past, several years. And then we looked back and said, well, Vanderbilt was down about 30 in the last meeting with about 5 minutes to go. And I thought that was probably more of the closer range to where this, obviously I didn't think Kentucky maybe would win by 30, but I thought it would be at least the halfway point of that to maybe convincingly get a win here. But I just thought this was an ugly game, and I think the officiating had something to do with that. This was just I don't know. To me, this was just one of those games that like we see sometimes in the SEC. We always talk about. I mean, got just so many fouls, so many free throws. I just feel like no one ever really got a huge rhythm, if that makes sense. Like it just kind of felt like one of those games. Obviously, Kentucky got off to a pretty good start. Whatever they were up at halftime or whatever, and kind of that stretch run going into the half. But for Kentucky, I mean, it was kind of the same scenario where I think that Oscar Tshiebwe's on the floor, 35 minutes, and once again, 17 rebounds, double-double, no surprise there. I know he had 4 turnovers and 4 fouls, but still, I mean, just his presence on the floor just makes Kentucky so much more different. And, we kept talking about this too, is like Keon Brooks and like Davion Mintz, those guys in particular. We talked about Brooks against Kansas. He goes for 27, and now he comes right back and scores 20 against Vanderbilt. Mintz, we've always said is just kind of one of those guys that, you're not going to expect him to come out and score 15 a night necessarily, but he has that capability if the other team kind of takes away some of the things that, the other guards can do. And so that's why I think Kentucky's depth we keep talking about is just, it's really good, because even when Severe Wheeler and Ty Washington combined for 10 points, you've got other guys that can step up. And that's kind of what happened here with Kentucky. This was kind of one of those games that I don't know if there's a lot to take away from this. I know Liam Robbins played for the first time for Vanderbilt, but I mean, look, it's his first game. I mean, he didn't really do a whole lot, but I don't know what you can really expect from him in a first game, especially. Congratulations, your first game at Vanderbilt is going to be against Kentucky and Oscar Tshiebwe. Not exactly the best matchup to start off with, but then again, it's like I thought Vanderbilt played well for the most part, but I thought it was kind of the same story. Take Scottie Pippen out of the equation, or even halfway out of the equation, and this probably isn't much of a game. So.
Yeah, Pippen had 33 points. He also had, 5-6 turnovers, which has kind of been the thing with him.
I think you'll take those if you got a guy that's going to score 33 and no one else is going to score, I guess. So.
Well, I mean, they're in a spot where sometimes his defense, I think, is a little lacking. You'll see his plus-minus numbers when he's on the floor at times, and they're kind of ugly. No, I think that's probably because he plays a lot of minutes, and you could probably take any guy in the country, and he'll have an ugly plus-minus number every once in a blue moon. So it's probably situational. And look, he's got to have energy, because if Pippen has a big game, then they got a shot to win. And if he does, and he does, and I think he has to, I'm not going to say not give effort on defense, but he can't go full-on KD Johnson for 35 minutes a night for them to win. So it's kind of a balancing act with them. And that's kind of the best case scenario is he gets 33 and they're close. But the Robbins thing was the biggest takeaway for me, is that he's playing again. He played 13 minutes, didn't show up in the box score. I thought at times in spots he neutralized Tshiebwe a little bit, but man, he had trouble just running up and down the floor. He was gassed in 13 minutes of play. And so as much as they could use Liam Robbins, in the sense of the Liam Robbins who led the Big Ten in blocks a year ago, he just is nowhere near ready to be that guy. And I'm not dogging Liam Robbins. The kid's had a foot injury for 3 months, and to do that, you can't run and jump and do the things you need to do to play basketball. But he's got a long way to go to help them in the way that we thought he could coming into the year.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you have to, if you're Vanderbilt and you want to be optimistic here, you lose by 7. Rodney Chapman doesn't score. Liam Robbins, as we said, he doesn't score either, but he plays 13 minutes, and so I think it's like you can at least take that out of this, I suppose. But like I said, it still to me comes down to you now have those two guys back, which we thought, those two guys could be the key to their season, Chapman and Robbins. All right, now you've got these guys on the floor. They're going to both play minutes now moving forward. Hopefully they stay on the floor the rest of the year. And so if you can just get some consistency and again, get Robbins acclimated, I think there are some things you can take away from this and say, all right, we still only lost by 7 at Rupp. And yeah, it took a Scottie Pippen, huge night with 33, but I think they can build off of this. Now, whether whether you have the patience to do that, fan base wise, I think that's another story. But maybe this is something you can build off of. But I thought this was a game that, man, it just you said it, like neither coach had many reasons to be happy. I think with the overall flow of the game and the officiating and those kind of things. But I think for Kentucky, this is just kind of one that you get. I still don't think it was like a look-ahead game. I know we talked about that previously going in, and that was probably one of the reasons why I felt a little bit stronger about Kentucky winning this in a bit more of a convincing fashion, because I still don't think that was a look-ahead game for them to go to Alabama. But I just, you said it. I mean, Vanderbilt's just kind of that team that sometimes is right there. They can just kind of hang around. And really, I think, too, you have to kind of look at Vanderbilt's overall picture this year, right? Aside from one game, well, I think 2 games. Like I said, the Kentucky scoreline the first time around was misleading. That wound up being 12, but that was a 30-point game with 5 minutes left. I guess outside the one in Florida where they couldn't do anything, they've been in pretty much every game they've played, right? I mean, for the most part. So I think that's what you look at with them is maybe that's just going to be their identity. This team is like maybe they're not going to win all these, and to this point they've got 3 SEC wins and 2 of them are against Georgia, but maybe they're going to be good enough to hang around, and maybe that's when we talk about Saturday's games. Maybe you can build off of that and play an LSU team and maybe have a chance to pull an upset there for a team that's kind of reeling right now. So,
there was a pretty good stretch in the 90s, the 2000s, the 2010s where this was a pretty nice SEC basketball rivalry, and I would say one of the top ones in the league. Kentucky, though, has now won 12 straight in this series, and you watch them. When Vanderbilt used to give Kentucky fits, it's when it would just shoot people out of the gym. And the brand of basketball they play now is just so different from the one that they played when that was a competitive rivalry.
Yeah, I mean, that I always said, I mean, what was the one thing you could always count on, with Kevin Stallings' teams, any of those, even go back further, right? Some of those teams, whether Fogler or whoever, they always had a couple of those guys that could just come out and just knock down 6 threes at any given moment's notice, right? Like they could just come out and just make threes and they completely change the game. But really, you look back at, I mean, I'm trying to think, like the last, probably 4 or 5 teams there, you've had some guys that can make shots, but still, I think it's just like, that was kind of the formula for success for Vanderbilt for a lot of years, because I think at that time it was, all right, you're not recruiting necessarily the top 5 stars and, even top 4 stars and guys like that a lot of the time. But if you can just find these guys that you can just kind of mold into these, just knockdown shooters, use the 3-pointer as sort of the equalizer against the Kentuckys of the world, that, have Ron Mercer and Tony Delk and all of those guys and Antoine Walker. That can be kind of the difference maker. And that's what they did for a lot of years. But now it's just like, you go through coaching changes to Bryce Drew, to Jerry Stackhouse. It's just a different system and it's a different style of play. But yeah, that was always something they could do very well. But that just hasn't really been, kind of that's no longer that identity for this program the way it used to be. So.
Arkansas goes to Athens and does basically what we thought Arkansas would do, which is blow Georgia out. Final in that one, 99-73. That's 7 wins in a row for Arkansas. Now, this was closer than the final score. It was 53-47 at half. And full disclosure, I didn't get to see any of it. But
you missed a half.
Yeah, I know. Stanley Moody had 31, which was 31 more than he had 2 games ago. But he's generally been better for them in conference play lately. Jalen Williams, I think, the real story on this team. We've talked about him a lot. He was not a guy who had scored much. He's got 8 straight double-figure scoring games for them now. He's a rebounding machine. He had 2 double-figure scoring games before that. But this team, again, coming together, they could go a little deeper on the bench last night because of the score. I think they basically played 8 instead of 6 with a few other guys getting bit minutes at the end. But, again, Arkansas is taking care of business in the phase of the schedule where they basically had to win these games, not because they moved the needle, but because you can't afford bad losses, and so they took care of business again.
Yeah, both teams shot. I said you missed a half. Both teams shot nearly 60% in the first half. It was all offense, and we've talked all year about Arkansas not really being a great three-point shooting team. Heading into that game last night, they had 3, I think, double-digit, three-point games this year. They made 15 last night. That was, their best shooting performance of the year, but probably the worst defensive team perhaps they played this year too. So, I guess maybe outside of Central Arkansas, I take that back. But, still, I mean, that's just kind of what it comes down to. We always say that with Georgia it's kind of interesting. We talked a lot probably several weeks ago about Georgia not really having many of those games where they just get, blown out. But when you're so bad defensively, you just can't stop anyone. If you get a team that gets hot, you can't just get blown out, and that's what happened here. Georgia just had no answer for Arkansas. I mean, you talked about Amude having 31, and yeah, I mean, that's just, you love to see that if you're Arkansas, because now you're like, all right, we got different guys like this, even if it's against Georgia. We got different guys who can make, these kind of plays and put us in the position. I mean, they, shoot 54% from 3, 58% from 2. I mean, this was quite a performance from Arkansas. But I always say this too. This is what you want to see if you're Arkansas. You don't want to go to Georgia and do what Alabama did, right? Like you want to go in and take care of business against a team that's not as good as you. And I think that's where, to me, that's a sign of a team that's starting to reach that good team, platform. Like they were already there, but that I think to me can be just as important as some of the other, wins on their resume. It's like, when you show you can go on the road and just completely, wallop a team that you should do that to, I think that speaks a lot about kind of your potential as well. And, that's what we talk about, right? Like the common denominator is they've now played Georgia and Missouri, which, again, probably, for most people, maybe the 2 worst teams in the league. They beat Missouri by 44 and they beat Georgia, by 6 on the road. So, that I like to see that. If I'm an Arkansas fan, I like to see that. If I'm someone who thinks Arkansas, can have a shot in the tournament, is they're showing that they can take care of business when they need to take care of business. Some of these other games may be close, but they're winning them. And as we said, this is now the turning point. The rest of the way, aside from that game, I'm not even going to classify the game at Missouri anymore because we'll talk about them in a second. But you pretty much have to assume every game at Missouri now is going to be close. So every game on their remaining schedule for Arkansas is going to be, outside of the one against Missouri, although I think it's going to be a tough game, is going to be a quality win opportunity for Arkansas.
Yeah.
So that is a great spot to be in when you got a month of games here coming up. And really, you've got a lot more reasons for optimism because even if you lose some of these games, they're not going to hurt you that much, but the chances of Arkansas losing out, very slim. So, you're probably going to pick off some of these teams somewhere along the way, and I think that just puts Arkansas in a great spot, I think, here over the next month.
Yeah, they're 6-3 in the league. Ken Palm has got them going 10-8. 37 in the net is of Thursday morning, and here's the key games on the schedule from here on out. It just unquestionably the hardest schedule phase of their season. Here's some games ahead. They got Mississippi State and Auburn at home, at Alabama, at Missouri, Tennessee at home, at Florida, Kentucky, and LSU at home and at Tennessee. So just there's really not a let up in there at any point. Especially with the Missouri game being on the road. But Akendo back for Georgia. We wondered about him. The Bulldogs are just at this point playing not to be the 14, and I think that's an uphill climb. So,
yeah, I don't have a lot to say about Georgia. I still think if you're Alabama, you're looking back and wondering,
oh goodness,
what happened?
Yeah. Florida 66, Missouri 65. That game, you may have missed it because they moved it to 2 Central due to a snowstorm in Columbia, so Florida could get out of there. Myron Jones just couldn't miss early in that game. He had 18, got a little banged up, and came back. Tyree Appleby, I think, carried them a lot of the second half. That was just a nail-biter down the stretch. Florida 10 of 23 from 3 and 22 of 26 at the line, and I think that and guard play really was the story.
This is just, to me, this was, man, what a missed opportunity for Missouri. What was it? They were up. I'm trying to think exactly what it was. Like,
they were up most of the second half, if not most of the game.
Well, like even with a minute left, I gotta pull this up because I don't want to mess this up and get it wrong. But like, I'm watching this game and I'm thinking they have every single opportunity to win this thing, and they just could not find a way to do it. I think they got up as much as 9, I want to say, in the second half. I think it was somewhere in there. Yeah, I want to say it was 52-43. I'm looking it up here. 8 minutes to go. So they're up 9 with 8 minutes to go. But, you keep watching that game. You're like, all right, now they're up. What was it? They were up 3 with a minute left. They're up 3 then with 36 seconds left. That's what I was thinking. So they're up 3 with 36 seconds left. And, somehow you just get Tyree Appleby making these 4 free throws the rest of the way, and that's the difference in the game, or whatever it was, 3 or 4. But I just thought that, man, Missouri had every opportunity, and now, you look at it from Missouri and you're like, oh my goodness, we've lost to Florida at home by 1, we've lost to Auburn at home by 1, they lost to A&M at home by 3. I mean, they have just had a lot of close opportunities, and that's kind of what you bank on now. I told you I went for the upset on this one, and I was thinking we may get this one right because they were up, and I was like, all right, maybe they just a couple plays here or there, and this is ball game. But give Florida credit. I mean, they found a way to win this one, and what did we say going in? We're like, these are the ones for Florida now. They can't lose. Like, they just cannot afford to lose these kind of games anymore, and because they don't have enough good wins right now. And again, you have to avoid the bad losses when you don't have enough good wins. And so they did that here, and it doesn't, again, that doesn't matter how it looks. It's just a matter of, did you win or lose? And Florida found a way to win. I didn't think they were, as just watching this game, even in that stretch of the second half, like I said, with 8 minutes or so left, I'm thinking Missouri, just a couple more plays here, and they may kick this thing to double digits, and that may be it, just because of the way Missouri plays defense. But it wasn't to be. And, Missouri just kind of, their own worst enemy there down the stretch. And but that's kind of why they are where they are, and it's kind of why Florida is where Florida is right now, just as a team that's just kind of trying to stay right there in that NCAA tournament conversation, knowing that, just like we said with Arkansas, Florida will have some opportunities here coming up, not as many as Arkansas, but still got 2 games against Kentucky, still got Arkansas, still got Auburn. So I think this is a great win for Florida, not in terms of just the opponent, but just in terms of you can't really afford to lose it, and they found a way to win it. So
when you look up bubble in the dictionary or Wikipedia or whatever, the Florida team picture, I think, is on there right now.
Yeah, they're right there. I would have to believe, and look, I don't look at every bracketology there is, but you've got to believe Florida's a team right now that's in that last 4 in, last 4 out, and they're just kind of sandwiched right there right now, depending on the day. So, I mean, we'll see. We'll see what happens with them. Like I said, it's not like they've just gotta. It's still the same formula. They probably need to find a way to beat. They need to beat Kentucky once. All right, like you need to beat Kentucky in the last game of the season at home. That's great if you can do that. Winning at Rupp's going to be a tough challenge. But then, you do have Auburn and Arkansas at home too. So if they can win 2 of those 4 of that foursome right there, and again, you also have to avoid losing to Georgia, right? They still got Georgia twice, which, that's also something that I think you could kind of look at. But I think that's what it comes down to for Florida. Is just they need to. If you go 2-2 against that group of four, I think you're feeling pretty good about yourself. Again, barring getting swept by Georgia or something. So I think Florida's actually going to wind up being okay now. I wasn't sure, and I thought this could be a swing game as we talked about. If Missouri wins this game, then I think you get a lot of questions about where Florida can get to. But Colin Castleton, when does he come back? I think that's the bigger question. And once he does come back, remember, we know this, like the committee's always going to take this kind of stuff into
Yeah.
account. So I think that's also something Florida has going forward is it still managed to, and I mean, look, it's the same, not the same, but somewhat similar to the Oklahoma State game was this Missouri game. Had to find a way to rally, thinking that maybe you're down and out, but Florida has found a way to do it, just like they did against Mississippi State when Castleton was out a couple weeks ago, last minute thing, but he's out. We have to find a way to win this one. They did. And so I think you give them credit for that. And this one was on the road too, and haven't been a great road team. So, yeah, I think all the way around, doesn't matter how you do it. When you're a team like Florida, you just have to win, and they did.
Parting thoughts?
Nope. Yeah, we'll see. Like I said, this is where you start to get into those. We're second half now. We go into the second half of the SEC slate, and for teams like Florida, and several others, Mississippi State, I think even Arkansas, I think they're fine. Still in that category of, man, look at all the opportunities ahead of you. Alabama is another one I think is, things start to get a little bit interesting with them. Like we said, I don't think Alabama's going to be in the NIT, but they're just very up and down. And what a big opportunity on Saturday against Kentucky. So, yeah, this is where things get fun. LSU too, right? Like, can LSU turn things around? So, they're going to be a very interesting back half of the slate here.
All right. If you're watching, thank you. If you have not subscribed, please do. That helps us out a lot. Tell your friends. We are picking up steam here quickly at the 14. Picked up a lot of subscribers lately. That helps us. Anyway, thank you for watching. We've got more SEC basketball content coming up. Oh, and some baseball stuff coming really soon. So again, thank you for watching.